The following program contains a topic which may not be suitable for young viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi there, welcome to Cannabis Conversations, a weekly program designed to cure the many curiosities, clear up some of that misinformation, and with any luck at all, fill in the blanks for the missing information. I'll be your host, Green Irene. I'm an author, researcher, and educator. I'm also a cannabis enthusiast, consumer, both medical and recreational. Joining me today is my guest, Maureen Stewart, an energy worker. Hi, Maureen. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we got to talking after my first show last week, and it really drummed up a lot more curiosities in you. I'll let you speak on that.
It really did. So I have a history of irritable bowel syndrome, which has been going on for at least 12 years now.
Okay.
Which I think has evolved into I know it's evolved into leaky gut. So after watching your first show, it really sparked inside of me a real curiosity and interest in, because I am Green Irene, to the cannabis plant. And I have a medical background in nursing, and so I know some of the Western medicine stuff, although I have also looked into more natural things myself. I have a naturopath as well as a family practitioner.
That's very interesting, and I think that's a very powerful statement in taking responsibility for our own health and wellness. I think addressing all the experts in a multitude of sciences or what's the term?
School of thought.
School of thought. Yeah. And I think it gives us a much more well-rounded attitude towards caring for ourselves.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. So, my naturopath, people can only do what they know. They can only pull information from what they know and what their school of thought is and what they've studied and what they've experienced. And I do believe that everybody in the medical industry, whether it be natural or not, does what they can with what they know. I don't think anybody's, ill-intended. I think everybody's well-intended. But like you, I do feel that it is important to have that broad spectrum of information, of education to utilize. And I do think it's also important for them to work with me as a patient, as opposed to them telling me. Now, part of that's my personality, but part of that is my experience in the healthcare system and what I saw patients go through, and how it is important to keep our power with that. We know our bodies the best, and we've been with them long enough to know, and then work with these healthcare providers to figure out the best solution for me, for the individual.
For us as individuals, absolutely. Education is very empowering.
Yes.
And having that information behind you adds value to your opinion, and it helps, and it helps your caregiver care for you.
It absolutely does, and I know certainly with my naturopath, she likes that about me, because I do come in well prepared, and because I have a little bit of background, have a bit of an understanding, it does definitely help her.
So if you've been working with your naturopath and you have the nursing background, obviously, yes, that aids significantly. Have you discussed with your naturopath at all the subject of cannabis? And I say that knowing that you are not a cannabis consumer,
right.
And you never really have been. I mean, I'm guessing everybody has at some point in time back
school.
in their early teens and stuff, back in the good old 60s, 70s, but, or teens, our teen years. So that being said, I know you're starting to look at cannabis as a natural herb, and I have some information for you today that you're really going to enjoy researching further.
Wonderful.
But we'll get to that as we go along. Let's go back to speaking with your naturopath.
Okay.
How did you bring up the subject with her?
I have not. Well, I shouldn't say that. The subject did come up at one point, not dealing with leaky gut, but dealing with perimenopausal.
Okay.
And menopausal. My naturopath would like to have a better understanding. She herself yet doesn't have a great understanding around the medicinal uses of cannabis, but is certainly open to it. Right. What she had informed me of was that other women that were menopausal, sometimes, you get an estrogen spike that can make you feel like you're going crazy and, very anxious. And so she had mentioned that other patients of menopausal age did get benefit from cannabis in calming that down.
It is so nice to see the healthcare professionals actually listening to the patients and hearing that there is potential medicinal value that can be gleaned from the cannabis plant. I think the decades of prohibition really created the stigma that's attached to cannabis or cannabis consumption, and there is an archaic attitude which is finally being dissolved, for lack of a better term. So she talked to you about it with respect to menopause. Yes. Have you had any discussions with anybody with respect to the leaky gut syndrome?
I have not as of yet. However, I am going to be going to see her again soon, and after watching your show and getting more informed on the medicinal use of cannabis and leaky gut, or not leaky gut, but just cannabis in general, again, because I really am green to it, watching that opened my mind up a little bit more.
Nice.
And yeah, spiked me to think, oh, wait a minute, maybe this is something I should be looking at, especially when talking to the endocannabinoid specialist.
Endocannabinoid specialist. And I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, to be honest. So,
what really interested me was I was unaware that there, the multitude of uses and nutrients in the plant itself. I supplement with vitamins right now myself, and so I'm looking at it as a more broad spectrum. Gee, can I maybe utilize this plant and rid myself of taking other things at the same time?
Well, one of the great things about cannabis in its raw state is because it's still in its acidic state, the cannabinoids actually inhibit, it's research coming to my mind, the COX, the COX enzymes in the digestive system. And I know that has a lot to do with leaky gut syndrome.
Right. So, but I think, did you guys also speak about inflammation, that it is good for inflammation?
Absolutely. Right. The way that THC and CBD works in our endocannabinoid system, and I'm going to short form it now. This is one of the TLAs that three-letter acronyms that I use all the time. ECS stands for endocannabinoid system, and we talked about that last week briefly. In that system, we have CB1 receptors and CB2 receptors. Right. Now, the CB1 receptors are primarily in the brain, the central nervous system, but they are also in the digestive system. They are also concentrated in the digestive system in particular, is where you'll find CB1 and CB2 receptors. THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, that cannabinoid, most commonly known for the high that it gives us, attaches to those receptors, and the CB2 receptors are mostly in our immune system. So if you look at cannabis and the way that it affects our immune system, when those cannabinoids, THC and CBD, in conjunction fit into those receptors, it does things like decrease inflammation. It does things like suppress the immune system. Now, I'm not familiar enough with leaky gut syndrome, so I'd like you to speak a lot more on that subject, if you don't mind. Just kind of explain it to me a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't even know if I have a full understanding of it myself yet. However, from what I understand to this point, what happens is, and keep in mind, this has been going on 12 years for me.
Right. So you have a lot of symptoms that you're saying, is this associated?
Well,
or is it part of something else?
Yeah, so I think it's been a gradual thing, and I think, irritable bowel syndrome is one of the first things that people get diagnosed with when your bowel is inflaming, so when your intestines are inflamed.
Right.
And I think possibly what's happened with me is it's progressed to leaky gut by it going on for so long, being inflamed and then not being inflamed. And I think over time, it does affect the permeability of the intestine, which then, the reason it's called leaky gut, or medically it's intestinal permeability, is then your gut is supposed to keep things in the gut and not allow it to leak through. And with that inflammation and caused by many different things, what can happen over time is it leaves an opening where things like bacteria, like undigested food, different things like that can then go into your bloodstream that aren't supposed to be there. And then what happens is your body sees that as a foreign object, and your autoimmune system kicks in and tries to rid yourself of it. What my understanding is, and I should also let you know, what has been affected with me mostly around the whole leaky gut and autoimmune is my thyroid.
Okay. So let me see if I've got this right. So the leaky gut is kind of from irritable bowel. You've got that inflammation, and then the decrease in that. Kind of like a balloon. Blowing a balloon up too many times, ultimately the weakness of that lining, rubber, that lining wears down, and air escapes, and that balloon's not going to hold air anymore. I guess our intestines are sort of the same in that if they keep with that inflammation and the decrease in the inflammation, it's going to become weak. And these enzymes, this bacteria, the microbacteria, I don't know if I said that term correctly either, but all of that starts to leak out. And as it does, we experience a lot of things like nausea and
bloating and fatigue and brain fog. For me, the brain fog is the biggest thing that affects my life.
Yeah.
It's like a cognitive impairment almost.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how it can make us feel. I'm going to ask you to hold that thought for a couple of minutes while we cut to break. When we return, we're going to talk about how cannabis can have a very positive influence, or potential positive influence, in aiding with leaky gut syndrome. Stick around.
The following program contains a topic which may not be suitable for young viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi there, welcome back to Cannabis Conversations. I'm your host, Green Irene, and joining me today is Maureen Stewart, my friend and energy worker. Maureen is here talking about leaky gut syndrome. Before the break, we talked a little bit that you are not a cannabis consumer,
right?
And you haven't used it, but you are starting to consider it as a natural alternative for dealing with the digestive issues that you deal with. And you want these issues dealt with because some of the things you're experiencing, if we can address that, let's start with just before break. You said the fog, the brain fog, and I can certainly relate to that and understand completely, compassionately. So why don't you explain a little bit what it is you experience specifically?
Well, I can try to explain it, but honestly, it's one of those things I think you have to experience to really understand. And I say that only because when I'm not in that brain fog, it's almost a different world to me. It's like a confusion. It's like you're there, but you're not there all at the same time. Okay. I become very, it's like a cognitive impairment, and I don't want to say similar to dementia, but it's like I get memory loss, and you know, we can be having a conversation, but I'll really, it's like a fog, so I'm only kind of picking up on parts of it.
And I think, and you know, I think most of us can relate to it in probably a much lesser degree, just from the state of diarrhea or constipation. I mean, quite frankly, you get that kind of, wow, I really don't feel right. So we have brain fog with leaky gut syndrome. What are some of the other symptoms that you would experience that you are experiencing specifically that you think it's, well, you know IBS, but it's obviously an irritable bowel, but you think it's progressed to leaky gut. What are some of the other symptoms?
Well, as I mentioned before, the thyroid, it's definitely affected my thyroid.
Okay.
And I definitely get a lot of, so when I eat, not too long after I eat, and it's, so let me step back a bit. When it flares up, I basically have to go on a pureed diet or a liquid diet for my bowel to relax enough or not overwork, because it's already in stress. And then if I try to digest, you know, raw foods or anything that's hard to digest, it gets irritated even more. So when it's very inflamed, I tend to, you know, do a lot of soups and, you know, pureed soups and different things like that are easier on my bowel. Right. However, every time I ingest food when it's flared up, I can literally feel it going through my system.
Right.
And I become very bloated. I become quite nauseous. My appetite has gone down greatly. So I definitely have a decreased appetite. And honestly, you get to a point where you feel you're concerned about eating.
Almost fearful of food. Fearful of digesting
because
that food.
what is that effect going to be on my body?
Absolutely, and sometimes it's like I can pass on the steak, it's not worth it.
Yes.
I can appreciate that, absolutely. So, okay, now I know, and you've mentioned that you go to a naturopath, that you've looked for more, and you are very familiar with Western medicine. There are obviously pharmaceutical solutions to dealing with leaky gut syndrome. Are they not effective for you? Is this why you have gone more natural, or is it just a personal choice to focus on natural solutions?
So my personal experience has been that my family practitioner isn't knowledgeable in leaky gut, because I think it's to Western medicine, I think it's a fairly new thing. Versus naturopaths, I think, have been dealing with it for a longer period of time. That's my understanding.
Okay.
So even when I was diagnosed many years ago with irritable bowel syndrome, and I, you know, asked, well, what can be done, because I had a bunch of scopes done, all kinds of diagnostic testing to figure out what was happening with my bowels, because I was showing certain symptoms. And again, because unfortunately they're not well versed in nutrition or diet, you know, there really wasn't any resolve for me. So I took it upon myself, you know, you are what you eat. I started cleaning up my diet, trying to eat as organic as possible, you know, eating as healthy as possible, which I feel has helped.
Well, absolutely. I mean, my daughter Ashley is a holistic nutritionist, and she has, in cleaning up her diet, has literally changed her DNA, for lack of a better term. She is just a very healthy, happy young lady now, and functioning very, very well without all of the conditions and a lot of the symptoms you were describing. So diet is very important.
Yes.
Diet, proper nutrition. That being said, you're going to be happy to hear, I know that one of the reasons you have avoided cannabis use is to a lesser degree you were somewhat supporting the stigmatism that all cannabis gets you high. Now, you have learned in the last little bit, and through your own research and our conversations, that cannabis in its raw state will not attach to, it's still in an acidic state. Right. So that THC does not attach to the CB1 receptors in the same capacity, and it doesn't break the blood-brain barrier, giving us that euphoria. So raw cannabis, and to introduce that into your diet in through juicing, or add it as add the leaves to your salad during the day. These are all of what I'm saying is information you can find online, and I have a list of resources here for you today that I'm sending you home with.
Oh, great. Thank you.
For you to look up, and I've done a little bit of the research ahead of time. One of the things is, as I was saying earlier, the CB1 and CB2 receptors in both our throughout our immune system, as well as our central nervous system. The THC and the CBD combined as a whole plant work much more effectively in an entourage effect, based on most of the research that I have done, and a lot of what researchers have expressed themselves in the studies that I've read. Also, someone else I'd like you to look into is Rick Simpson oil, and I suggest him because he did a video series. It was called Run for the Cure. That was the name of it. And one of his leading cases that he was showing that this Rick Simpson oil, so the whole plant in a concentrated form, in an oil, is what Rick Simpson's oil. He was giving this woman Shona Banda, and she was suffering from Crohn's. This helped her in a very quick, brief period of time, and she's been doing exceptionally well. So it's definitely a video you should take a peek at. Okay. I mean, educate yourself, inform yourself, and then make the choice. The choices. So why are you finally considering cannabis as an option?
Well, part of it is after watching your first episode. That
Thank
definitely, here's what I'm finding. I'm finding the more, because like most of us out there definitely was a stigma attached to it for me. And I am finding that the more I educate myself on it, and the more I learn from you and other people that are educated on it, the more I'm losing that stigma, and the more I'm opening up to the actual medicinal value.
That's and the nutritional benefits.
And
that
the
can
nutritional.
Be
well, to me,
it.
that's yes.
And so we're going to talk more about this, and I'm definitely going to bring it up in a future episode when I have one of our doctors on board that can aid with this. And I'm hoping Dr. Elizabeth Kushner can join us very soon. Now, let's get away from that aspect. You have shown that you're looking more at natural solutions only because you find you're not getting the comfort of care that you're looking for pharmaceutically.
That, and I've become more natural. Like I've, throughout the last, say, 10 years, by eating clean and everything like that,
trying to keep the chemicals and the toxins out of your system
exactly,
and that sort of thing. And
exactly.
You know what, I can appreciate that
Exactly.
completely. On another note, now you did say that you have a background in nursing. You are no longer nursing, but you are doing energy work. This is something that fascinates me. You came into the cafe, you did a couple of Reiki practices to help introduce especially some of our clients or some of our customers that were coming in that were dealing with chronic pain, and they were looking for just an all-over body relief. Please tell us a little bit about energy work.
Sure. Yeah, and that was great doing that in the cafe, doing some complimentary work for people, and it definitely helped people, which was great. Energy work is hard for people to wrap their heads around.
It is. It's almost a foreign concept,
Because
and yet it's ancient.
If you can't see it, a lot of people don't believe it. Right?
Well, we've also been really programmed in Western civilization with, a million different influences. But please carry on.
Yes, absolutely. But the reality is everything is energy.
Yes.
You are energy, I am energy, everything in this room is energy. And so it's really just, for me, what I find benefits people is I'm not the one that's, taking their energy and abracadabra and fixing it. It's nothing like that at all. What it is getting somebody into a calm state where they can, then allow their energy to raise a little bit, and then I can go in and help them with their energy.
And have you used this on yourself?
I have.
Excellent. To what effect, or to what, how has it been for you as a tool?
Well,
for
I would
coping?
like to use it more as a preventative tool. However, currently I don't. What I find is like most people, I tend to wait till, like, say my bowel is really bothering me.
So you're better at taking care of everybody
else.
Pre-illness
Yes.
than well.
Yes.
You
But
know,
when something flares up, then I will lay down and I will actually do energy work on myself and calm myself down, yes.
the contractor's house is the last to get finished. You know how the story goes, right?
Yeah.
We take care of ourselves last, or so it seems. I really appreciate you joining me today. One of the things that I really want to get across with Cannabis Conversations is that it's time to normalize the conversation. We all have a lot of questions and a lot of curiosities. There is a lot of misinformation and missing information from our social circles. Getting people on here like yourself, or having people like yourself join me today, where you're curious. You're not a consumer, but you're considering it. What are your options? On that note, I again have to say thank you very kindly for joining me. Cannabis Conversations will be returning next week with Erica Kaloon from Body Stream, a cannabis clinic in Barrie and across Canada, I believe, if not definitely across Ontario, many branch offices. I've sent a lot of clients there for cannabis information and to connect with medical marijuana doctors. Please join me next week. Any additional information regarding today's episode can be found on the website at www.cannabiscornercafe.ca or on the Rogers TV Community Channel website. On that note, thank you for joining us today. Ciao for now.